Tee things up for people listening. Welcome everybody, it's Lucas here. Welcome to the podcast. This week's show is called Fast, Feast, and Repeat, and I am joined here with Jen Stevens, who you can see here on Instagram Live. Jen is a teacher and a writer, a podcaster. She's an advocate for intermittent fasting, and she's written a few books, Delay, Don't Deny, love that title, Feast Without Fear, and Fast, Feast, and Repeat. This is her newest book we'll be chatting about today. And while we're chatting, yeah, cool. That's great. You can share the book on Instagram. When we're listening, you can check out our website, which is her name, jenstevens.com, and we'll link up in the show notes as well. So Jen, welcome to the show.
Hi, glad to be here.
So if I understand correctly, you lost 80 pounds. Is that right?
I did. It's really, it happened from 2014 to 2015. So it's really hard to even remember what it was like to be 80 pounds heavier, but I did. I lost over 80 pounds and I've kept it off since hitting my goal in 2015. So it's been over 5 years. So, many of the listeners who have had weight gain and lost weight and gained and lost and gained and lost know that maintenance can be the hardest part. But with intermittent fasting, it's been very easy.
And so we have people listening, probably at least 50% of people need to lose weight, want to lose weight. Maybe they need to lose 80 pounds like you did. Maybe they need to lose 10 pounds. The struggle is still really very real. I'm just curious, when you were in that place, if you rewind the clock, 5 years, 6 years, whenever that was, what was the biggest challenge and struggle for you? Meaning, was it an emotional thing? Was it a physical thing? When you think back to that time and you go, oof, I'm so glad that's over. What part of it are you most glad?
Really all the above. It was physical, emotional, it was mental.
Yeah.
I have a doctorate in gifted education and I'm, a successful teacher. I'm now retired from teaching, but I'm like, how can I, get a doctorate, be successful, understand, so many things, be good at so many things, and yet be struggling with my weight. It just felt crazy to think that, surely it's got to be doable. And I have a husband who's always been slim, and he just said, well, just eat less, move more, we've heard all of our lives. I'm like, why can't I do it? What's wrong with me? So I felt like such a failure for all those years. My weight yo-yoed up and down, and I would get to a goal weight and then I would regain the weight. And, I did that roller coaster of weight up and down for really decades.
Yeah. What happens is when people talk about weight loss and weight gain, I lost a bunch of weight myself, and I had quite a large weight loss company for a number of years. So I know this space really intimately. And when people talk about it, they always try to simplify it. They always say exactly what you just said, eat less and exercise more. And I always say it's like this kindergarten explanation of it. It would be like, I always say it would be like if you went to a marriage counselor and they said, fight less and love each other more. It's like,
there you go.
Yeah, okay. Or you went to a financial planner and they said, you need to spend less and earn more. It's like, it's not that it's not true. It's just so basic that it's just terrible advice. It's just completely terrible advice. So I know in your book and in your work, you talk a lot about how diets fail. But a lot of people don't really understand that diets, the statistics are just horrible. So, whether we're looking at Weight Watchers or keto or paleo, whatever kind of crazy thing people are into, they usually fail, right? What have you discovered in your research?
Well, it's, the body fights back to weight loss. Our body, when it senses that we're in a famine or something terrible is happening, our body can fight back and lower our metabolic rate. So that's why, the diet past where you were eating small frequent meals may not have worked well for you. You can stick to that low calorie diet for a certain period of time and then your body fights back. You start urge to binge, for any of us who have really been good at, one of those low calorie diets. And then all of a sudden it's like we find ourselves in the kitchen, like eating everything in sight and we can't stop eating. It's because our body is like, hey, we're having a calamity here. You better eat and eat and eat while the food's available or you might die. Our bodies are trying to save us and protect us at all times. So, we can really try to control calories in, right? But our body will fight back if it senses long-term deprivation. And also our body can turn down calories out. That's the slowing the metabolism. So it really is hard, you're white knuckling it and then you fail again and you're like, why am I so weak? And really it's hard to fight against biology.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think I love that you mentioned that because I think so much of what we're trying to do with weight loss is the fight. And you can fight, but you won't win long term. You know, it's like, whenever I tell people that diets don't work and I show them the CDC stats or the World Health Organization stats, like 92 to 98% fail, they say, yeah, but my mom did keto for 6 weeks in January and she lost 12 pounds. And then you go, ... what happened in February? Oh yeah, well, she gained it back because she wasn't strong enough. She didn't have the willpower. She couldn't stick to it. And this like self-flagellation, I'm not good enough, I don't have willpower, that it's running in most people's heads. Like, if only I could just keep my carb intake to 50 grams per day. If only I, you know, this like crazy browbeating idea that like, if we have excess weight, there's something wrong with us, we're dysfunctional. Right. Then I always just say like, okay, let's pause. Yeah,
we feel that guilt of how can I not get control of this? What's wrong with me? Again, and we beat ourselves up over and over. I did it for years, you know. And thank goodness for intermittent fasting.
Yeah, and then, you know, the thing that I always tell people is I was like, you know, take a look at politicians, take a look at Hollywood actors, take a look at some of the most wealthy, successful, connected people in the world. They have the exact same struggle with weight as the rest of us. You know? So you can't say it's willpower. You can't say it's just it's a misalignment with understanding our own biology and trying to work with it rather than fighting it. Let's get into intermittent fasting a little bit. I first got exposed to this on accident. I went to, I guess it was in 2002, 2003, so quite a while ago. I went to a 12-day meditation center, a silent meditation center, and when I got there, I learned that they stopped feeding us at noon. And even at noon, all they gave us was a cup of tea and an apple.
Right.
So basically, I ate at 6 in the morning, and then I ate at noon, and that's it. You know, that's it. And I never really gave it a name. I never really thought about it, but it was a big turning point for me in my life. I made a bunch of health changes, made a bunch of lifestyle changes, but I also just started losing body fat just crazy fast. When I left the meditation center, I kept up this very short eating window. It was easy for me to do. It helped with my mental clarity, helped with my meditation, my focus. And I just got crazy lean. Like, I didn't need to lose a bunch of weight at that point, but I just got really, really lean, effortlessly lean. I had a lot of mental clarity. And, you know, all these years later, it's become really popular. And I'm so excited about it because for most people, it's pretty easy. It's not super restrictive. Can you chat a little bit about what this concept is? People, as soon as you say fasting, people imagine Jesus in the desert and starving themselves and emaciation.
Right. Well, the approach that I follow is a daily eating window approach, also known as time restricted eating. Yeah. So I, like you were talking about, y'all had everything within a 6-hour period of time. Is that about right? About what you said?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So, you know, you focus all of your eating into a window of time. My eating window ends up being anywhere from 2 to 6 hours most days, depending on my schedule. It varies. It's a very flexible way to live. And I tend to have an afternoon to evening eating window, and I like to have dinner. I have dinner with my husband every day, and I'll wait late afternoon, and I'll usually open with a snack, and then later I'll have my dinner. That's my window. And you know, you hear a lot of different window lengths, like 16-8 is one that's very popular. You know, that's almost like what people are doing who are not fasting. You know, think about this. You wake up in the morning. If someone wakes up and has a normal breakfast, maybe they eat breakfast at 7 o'clock and then they have lunch, have dinner. Well, if all you do is start skipping that breakfast that you're used to having, you have lunch at noon and then, you know, have your dinner later, you know, you're already in that window. You're going to have some benefits from the fast. Now, if your goal is to lose body fat, an 8-hour window with 2 full meals may not give you the effects that you're looking for, but it's a great place to start and let your body adjust to fasting.
Yeah. You know, I spent so many years lecturing on nutrition and micronutrients and, you know, all kinds of different things related to food. And then, I don't know, I guess it was about 4 years ago, I was just like, if you do nothing else, just do this, because sometimes it's enough. Sometimes people spend years and years studying nutrition, trying to do calorie counting, trying to get in a caloric deficit, trying to exercise this amount of time, and then all they do is start skipping breakfast and they lose the weight. You know, sometimes it can be that simple. It's not always that simple, but for so many people, it's such a non-issue. Most people I meet never want to eat breakfast anyway. Like they've been waiting their whole life for permission to not eat breakfast. Everybody hates breakfast. So it's like they're so worried they're going to throw off their metabolism or screw up their body. It's like, no, you can start your first meal at noon. It'll be fine. And so I just find it's such a high leverage thing that people are scared of. So let's talk a little bit about the scared factor, because this is what people are worried about. They're worried they're going to, especially women, they're worried that it's going to throw off their hormones. They're worried that, their blood sugar is going to be so low, they're going to pass out on the street. They're worried that it's unnatural, it's dangerous. You need to wake up and, immediately fill your body with fuel. Allay some of people's fears if you could.
Well, for women, for one thing, women are right to worry that over restriction is not good for us hormonally, but intermittent fasting is not about over restriction. For me, over restriction, that was back in the days when I was trying to do a really low calorie diet with a tiny little breakfast and a tiny little tiny little dinner. That's over restriction, and that's not what we want to do with intermittent fasting. With intermittent fasting, you fast, you eat, as the title of my book, Fast, Repeat, you eat well, you nourish your body, you're eating. So that's really important. So the only thing women need to worry about, of all ages, is not also over restricting within your eating window. You want to make sure that you're nourishing your body well. Now, for people who worry about their blood glucose, for example, you may feel like you're hypoglycemic, and if you don't eat, you have a crash. Well, that's true for many people who are used to the frequent small meals. Back when I was waking up, having a little breakfast, you fuel up, your blood sugar goes up, you eat, it goes back down. You need to eat again, your blood sugar goes up, then it goes down. So you're caught on that blood sugar roller coaster all day long. And as the blood sugar goes down, you fuel back up. So what you're not ever doing is really tapping into your stored fat for fuel. So the goal with intermittent fasting is you want to fast clean, which is a name that we came up with in my intermittent fasting support groups. So when you fast clean, you want to keep your insulin levels low so you can tap into your stored fat for fuel. You're going to be well fueled once your body adjusts to fast. And you're not going to have the crashes, the ups and the downs. You wake up in the morning, you're in a fasted state. You have steady energy throughout the morning. When you open your eating window, you feel great. And I really think it's the way we're meant to be. We're not supposed to be chasing the ups and downs of blood sugar crashes. That's why it feels so bad, because I don't think it's the way our bodies are meant to be. We're meant to be metabolically flexible so that when you're fasting, your body can tap into stored fat for fuel. That's why it's there. You're not supposed to have to fuel up every, couple of hours.
The first question that comes up from people immediately, as soon as you talk about reducing their eating period, the first thing they say is, ... but what about my Bulletproof Coffee? Or what about just a little bit of branched chain amino acids? What about lemon water? But I take this special apple cider vinegar and it alkalizes my body. What about this celery thing? And it's like, I just find that people are desperate for sticking things in their mouth.
I love to put that, right? It's like we need to have, I liken it to like my toddlers with a sippy cup. When my kids were little, they always had something going on, right? But, we're not meant to have a flavor adventure every moment of the day. But it makes your body think food's coming. Even if you're having like a diet soda, you might think, well, I'm having a 0-calorie diet soda, but you're getting that flavor. Your brain's like, ooh, calories are coming in. And then calories never come. And that's even worse.
Yeah.
So you want to keep, I have 3, I talk about this in Fast, Feast, Repeat in the chapter about what is the clean fast.
Yeah.
We have 3 fasting goals. One is to keep insulin low. So we want to avoid tasting anything that our brain might think is food. For example, the diet soda, chewing gum. Stay away from all of those things. Mints. Don't drink your apple cider vinegar. Our second fasting goal is that we want to tap into our stored fat for fuel. And that's why you're not going to be drinking your Bulletproof Coffee, because that's a coffee cup full of fat. You're going to be using that fat for fuel instead of your stored body fat. And then our third fasting goal is we would like to have increased autophagy, which is our body's cellular repair that goes on when we're in the fasted state. And what halts autophagy? Protein. So that's why you don't want to take in, your branched chain amino acids. You don't need to take in bone broth. Save all those things. Bone broth is good for you. Open your window with it. Your body is cycling protein during the fast. Your old junky protein. That's the process of autophagy, and that's what we want to have happen. So someone's asking, what did I say about apple cider vinegar? Do not have it during the fast. There's no reason to have apple cider vinegar during the fast. Actually, apple cider vinegar is most effective when taken with food. So there's really no reason to work it into your fast anyway.
I totally recommend the same thing. I think people just get too caught up. And there's also this really wonderful feeling when you just don't have to think about food.
Oh, yeah.
If you're used to eating 16 hours a day, it's just this constant thing. It's so nice to just, I'm going to eat my first meal at noon or at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and to not be hungry. It takes a little while to get there, but to not be hungry, and not have to think about it. You can leave the house earlier and all these things. I just find it really, really convenient. I know that you write about one of your chapters about bio-individuality. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because some people are saying, I see somebody saying, I'm 60 years old. Another person will say, I'm diabetic. Another person will say, everyone in my family is obese. How important is it that people take into account their unique biology, whether it's congenital or something that they've adapted to?
Absolutely key to understand that we're all different. We all, anybody who's in the diet space, tried to find, the best diet. You've read diet books, you keep reading them, and you read one, like, for example, the low-fat era. I remember that, I'm 51, so I remember the low-fat era, and, the science, it makes sense, so you try it. You might feel terrible doing that. I actually did great on the low-fat diets of the 90s, but then the low carb diets are really popular now with keto. And some people, you read those books, the science sounds so good. You try it. Maybe you don't feel great that way. That's actually the way I didn't feel great on a low carb. I never once was able to lose weight on a low carb approach. It doesn't work well for my body. And so you read all these diet sounds good, then you try them and it may not work for you, or maybe it works beautifully for your best friend but not for you, or maybe it works for you but not for your friend. So the key is that we are all different when it comes to what foods work well for us. And you can learn to trust yourself instead of trying to find the answers in somebody else's diet plan that they wrote for you. You figure out what foods work well for you. I feel great when I eat a lot of high quality vegetables. I feel great with whole grains. I do great with beans. But I know people who don't. And I believe them. They say, gosh, I can't eat beans. Beans are not good for my body. They're probably right with well. So learn to take back the power yourself. Intermittent fasting is about when you eat, and you are in charge of what you eat. And so don't give that control over to somebody else with a diet plan that might be exactly what works for them, but you're in charge of figuring out what works for you.
Yeah, I think it's so important. I always say, it's important to learn how to eat, but not what to eat, because that's individual, right? So the guiding principles, eating windows and general ideas about what nutrients we need, we need to eat omega-3s, you need to have some relative balance. But what that looks like, I live here in Spain, the food on my plate looks totally different than somebody who lives in Portland, Oregon, or somebody who lives in Mexico City, or it's just very different what we have available to, whether it's what's local, socioeconomic limitations, maybe you're a full-time student, you just don't have time to cook. There's all kinds of different factors, and people get really, really caught up in exactly what they need to eat. People email me all the time. Can you tell me exactly what to eat today? No. No. I can tell you how to eat. I can tell you how to eat, focusing on whole foods, non-processed foods, making sure you're shortening your eating window, making sure you're getting the stuff that you have to get, like omega-3s and these kinds of things. And that is, I think, it's kind of the next simple answer to eat less and move more, which just doesn't really get people anywhere. This is like a really simple thing. It's like, okay, let's shorten your eating window down. Okay, let's make sure your macros are relatively balanced, and let's make sure those micronutrients are sorted out. When after you lost the weight, what was the biggest breakthrough that you felt, either personally or professional? How did it change your daily life?
Well, over time, I really learned to tune into my body and figure out, like I said, what foods work well for me, but also when I felt best eating. And a long time ago, back when I was obese, I really was struggling with the whole idea of how to just live your life, right? Like, what's going to happen when I lose the weight? Do I start eating all day again, and maintenance? What do you do? The thing that changed my life the most is realizing that intermittent fasting, the way that you eat, it's not just a short-term solution that you do for a while and then you stop it. You have to really have a lifestyle. You mentioned or the statistics about, the people who manage to lose weight and keep it off, over 90% are not successful with that.
Yeah.
So in order to make it something that's livable and long term, you really have to view it through the lens of, this is how I live my life. I'm an intermittent faster. This is how I live. And once I flipped that switch, that's the thing that was life changing. Because even when I hit my goal weight back in 2015, I still was like, okay, now how can I, go back to normal? And having to wrap my mind around, no, this is my normal. This is how I feel the best. This is how I'm going to age well. This is how I live now. That was the biggest shift.
For people who go to the gym or go running or do other forms of exercise, another question that comes up right away is it safe? So I'm a yoga teacher, for example, and we'll teach early morning classes, and always there's somebody who shows up at 7:30 in the morning completely panicked. I must have a banana before class or I'm going to pass out on the floor. So sometimes it's true, people have blood sugar issues, but mostly it's just habitual. But for people who are getting started, do you recommend fasted exercise? Do you recommend not to do exercise when you're fasted? What's the easy entry point for people getting started?
That's a great question. And really, it depends on where you are in your fasting. Have you built up your fasting muscle yet? When you first start intermittent fasting, I have a period of time in my book called the 28-day fast start. And the whole point of that is just to let your body adjust to fasting. You fast clean, let your body adjust. And that would not be the time to do heavy exercise, because your body is used to, even someone eating the traditional, throughout the day, your body is not skilled at tapping into your fat for fuel yet. You might be needing a banana and your body's not going to know where to find the fuel. So fast, clean, maybe take it easy as your body is adjusting. But once your body adjusts to fasting, you're going to find that you're able to do whatever you want in the fasted state. I interviewed someone for my podcast, Intermittent Fasting Stories, last week, and she is one of those ultra marathoners, and she does all in the fasted state. She used to be one of the people that traveled with the gels and did all the stuff, but now fasted state is works great for her. Her body is adjusted. She's able to have all the stamina and endurance she needs. I want to apologize for that loud noise. The yard man just came and he's doing something around the perimeter of my house, so I'm sorry about that. It should be over in a minute.
I worked in cleansing centers for a number of years, detox centers and things like this, and one of the pitfalls of this is right away people can turn it into an eating disorder. And you see it online where, first they start off with something really simple. They see two people like us talking, really positive, happy about it. And then they think, wow, if like a 14-hour fasted window is good, or an 18-hour fasted, what if I just stopped eating for 2 days? What if I starved myself for a week? I'm dirty, I'm broken, I'm fat, and they need to starve themselves. And I've seen this. I work at these centers in Thailand, and these people would show up coming off a bender. I mean, they've been drinking and eating for months, and they just come and they'd sit by the pool and psychologically starve and torment themselves for weeks. They'd get tan, lose a bunch of weight. They'd be really excited about it. I'm just sitting here watching this psychological train wreck. At this point, I don't even care about the weight loss or anything like that. Like this is trash. And if you go online, you see a lot of people fall into this trap where if 12 hours is good and 14 hours is better, what about if I can starve for 14 days? All the toxins from my, the birthday party I went to when I was 8, they're all going to come out of my liver, this kind of crazy obsession. How do you help people who are struggling with food addiction, who are struggling with lifetime of obesity, who are prone to eating disorders? How do you help them get into this without taking it to a level where the mental health side of things is even worse than the physical health?
That's a great question. And, we see this in the fasting community. I've got some very large intermittent fasting support groups. One just hit 300,000 today.
Wow. Congratulations.
Altogether, we have, almost 450,000 members.
Wow.
And so a community that large, you do see people who tend to overcorrect. They're like, well, I had a big weekend with my family. I ate too much. Now I'm just going to fast for, days. And we really try to encourage people not to have that sort of a mindset. Fasting is not a reaction. Fasting is not a punishment. Fasting is a time for your body to rest and reset. And really, I never recommend anyone do fasts longer than 72 hours unless you're under medical supervision. There are fasting centers that that work with people through those longer fasts, and they make sure that you're in good health medically. And even so, even though fasts are of up to 72 hours you could do possibly on your own, I wouldn't do them frequently. I have a saying in my book, Fast, Feast, Repeat, this is not the fasting Olympics. It's not, more is always better. And so there does come a point, even with fasting, that your body can react to it as if it was over restriction again. And so that's not what we recommend. There are two approaches that I think are safe long term. One is the daily eating approach that you and I have already talked about. The other is an alternate day fasting approach, and I talk about this in Fast, Feast, Repeat as well. It's a very well-researched approach to fasting, but you balance a fasting day with then what we call a refeed day or an up day, where you're not restricting on that second day. So you have a fasting day and then an up day and then a fasting day and an up day. And the purpose of the up day is to let your body know that you're not in any danger of starving. You eat well. So the whole key is don't overdo the fasting. It's not a case where the more you do, the better it's going to be, because you really can overfast, and even with fasting, over restriction can be a problem.
Yeah, I think it's so. I always say it's not what you do 65 days of the year; it's what you do 300 days of the year. And so, a moderate or even a mildly positive habit that compounds 300 days out of the year is so much more important than what happens on your birthday or on Christmas or on New Year's. And I just see people get into this crazy thing, like you mentioned. Somebody goes to a New Year's party and they drink too much or they eat too much, and then suddenly they're bad and they start this talk. I was so naughty. I did all my cheat foods. Even these words, it's just like this weird, I don't know where it comes from, but we have this idea that suddenly we're bad and we're naughty and our body's toxic. And so now we must suffer. We must starve for weeks to get back to normal. And I always just think I think you're just normal, and you went to a New Year's party and now it's Tuesday, and now you got 300 days ahead of you, maybe even more, maybe 350 days ahead of you that are going to be just fine. And those little teeny investments, they really compound over time. This is true for so many things, but in the weight loss space, there's so much. It's like 80-90% up here, and the other stuff is really not that complicated. But man, that head trash, it can really, really take over somebody's psyche and take them down a really negative path.
It's true. And even the word cheat, you mentioned that, in my first book, Delay Don't Deny, I have a chapter, we don't cheat, we plan. So if anybody joins my community and they're new and they're like, how often can I have a cheat day? And I'm like, never. They're like, what? I'm like, no, because it's not a cheat, it's a choice. When I have Christmas Day and I, eat brunch with my family and then I have lunch and then a big dinner, I didn't have a cheat day. Yeah. It was Christmas Day. I chose to eat more that day. It wasn't a cheat, it was a planned indulgence. So, cheating is got all the negative connotations. So get rid of all that negative thinking that you have had ingrained for decades, and instead realize we're wired to eat. Rob Wolf has a book called that. His book is called Wired to Eat. We really are. Eat a big meal and celebrating and feeling full and satisfied, that's not supposed to be shameful. It's natural. We feast and we enjoy it.
Yeah, people always message me and say, can I have this? Is it okay to have honey? What if I have 2 glasses? You can do whatever you want to do.
Can I eat fruit? And I'm like, yes, you can eat fruit. Please eat fruit, right?
You can also eat chocolate cake. You can whatever. There's the vast majority of people who have a healthy weight that they don't struggle with. The vast majority of them eat all the same foods that all the unhealthy people do too. Yeah. They just have a different relationship with it. The Pringles or the Haagen-Dazs, instead of being a main part of their life, it's those 15 or 20 days out of their year instead of the everyday. Right. And I just don't find people eating amazingly very often. It doesn't matter whether they're glowing with health or whether they're stressed. It's pretty much the same kind of stuff ends up on people. It's just this relationship with food, this psychology stuff is such a big factor. Jen, I'm super excited to have you on the podcast, and I appreciate you playing around with this new format for people listening who want to.
Fun.
who want to check out your book and your previous books, I know will be of interest to you, where should we send them online and where should we send them on social media?
Well, if you go to jenstevens.com, as I said, Jen is G-I-N, Stevens with P-H, that will, you can link to everything from there, find my Facebook groups. Fast Feast Repeat is available pretty much anywhere. You can order it anywhere books are sold. And my first book, Laid on Deny, Living an Intermittent Fasting Lifestyle. Check out my podcast, Intermittent Fasting Stories. Also, the Intermittent Fasting podcast I do with co-host Melanie Avalon. So you can look for that one as well.
Thanks so much, and I appreciate your time, and let's keep in touch.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Take care. See you, everybody.